Assalamu alaikum everyone. There's an overload of my presence in this room today. मैं सोच रही थी पीछे कुछ अपने लिए permanent setup करवा लूँ, but I'm extremely grateful to Oxford University Press and the ILF organizers for giving me this opportunity to participate and moderate. And this session that I'm moderating is a very, very fascinating and a very scholarly session, and we have some stellar speakers who are going to join us for this session. मेरे लिए काम बड़ा आसान है OUP की तरफ से कि जितने भी स्पीकर्स आपने मेरी मॉडरेशन में दिए उनको इंट्रोडक्शन की बिल्कुल भी ज़रूरत नहीं है. My guests for today are Dr. Malia Lodhi, जो रास्ते में हैं, तशरीफ़ ला रही हैं. So we will maintain a seat for her. और मैं ज़हमत दूँगी जाहिद हुसैन साहब को और अहमद बिलाल महबूब साहब को कि आप प्लीज़ तशरीफ़ लाइए पोडियम पे और हमें ज्वाइन करें जितनी देर तक मलिया साहिबा भी आ जाएंगी एंड वी स्टार्ट आवर कॉन्वर्सेशन. Our session, this session pertains to Pakistan's search for stability. It kind of flows from the discussion that we had in the previous session about human security and non-traditional security as well as traditional security. What kind of an ideal mix is required for the country to actually work at. But we also have the question as to what kind of a search for stability that is required. Is stability and security an interrelated concept, or do they stand mutually exclusive? Stability security को लेके आती है या security stability को लेके आती है? इस तरह के बहुत सारे सवालात उठते हैं जब हम academic discourse भी करते हैं और आपस में discussion करते हैं. मैं थोड़ा सा bilingual होते हुए उर्दू की तरफ आना चाहूँगी, जो कि एक रवायत अहमद बिलाल महबूब साहब ने अपने पिलडाट में डाली है कि ये उर्दू में ज़्यादातर गुफ्तगू करवाते हैं, जो कि उसका एक अपना ही मज़ा है. बट हमारी जनरेशन क्योंकि वो आधा तीतर आधा बटेर वाली जनरेशन है, तो ना उर्दू ठीक है ना अंग्रेज़ी. बट आई विल ट्राई कि वी ट्राई एंड मेंटेन दैट फ्लेवर. But at the same time, for the country, our beloved country entering its nearly 80 years of existence, 77 years, where do we stand? We have faced several crises. Those crises have pertained to natural calamities. They have pertained to the breakup of the country into two parts, the East and West Pakistan in 25 years of the country's existence severed, and we had another independent country, Bangladesh, coming up, mashallah. We have also had waves of civil-military discontent, several martial laws, which kind of balance the number of how many years of civilian administration, how many years of military administration. But at the same time, institutional balance और imbalance का भी एक हम शिकार रहे हैं. हम एक perpetual economic crisis का शिकार हैं. जब हम कोविड की हमने बात की तो हमने ये देखा कि कोविड happened and उसके वक्त जो था हमें बहुत सारे ऐसे सवालात का जवाब देना पड़ा जो कि हमारे लिए बड़े overwhelming थे कि एक न्यूक्लियर स्टेट जो है लोगों को हेल्थ सिक्योरिटी प्रोवाइड नहीं कर पा रही, और इस तरह के बहुत सारे सवालात हैं जिसको डॉक्टर मलिया लोधी की जो किताब इसी टाइटल के साथ है, पाकिस्तान सर्च फॉर स्टेबिलिटी, उसमें पोली क्राइसिस के तौर पे हमने डिफ़ाइन किया है. डॉक्टर साहिबा हैज़ ऑल्सो जॉइंड अस. विद दैट आई वुड लाइक टू एंगेज आवर स्पीकर्स. जाहिद हुसैन साहब, a prolific writer, a journalist of international standing, an author of several books. His latest book has just been published. Congratulations, Zahid sir. And we look forward to reading that book and benefiting from it. Don't worry, there are several people who benefit from your writings and they become more knowledgeable and much more educated. We have Ambassador Malia Lodhi Sahiba with us and Ahmed Bilal Mahboob Sahib, who is heading a very important institution, the PILDAT, that looks at the legislative development, something that is badly needed in our country. Malia Sahiba, we were borrowing the thoughts from your book, Pakistan Search for Stability, which is the main theme of this session today, and you have talked about poly crisis. in your introduction, you say that the country is facing police crisis, and there are several reasons behind it. There's a perpetual economic crisis. Zahid, you have also contributed a chapter to that, and you have talked about the external threats Pakistan is facing. Let's start with that. Let's then trickle down to the internal and the micro level issues which are more pressing for the country. A lot of times we are trying to balance between traditional and the non-traditional security. And one aspect is that Pakistan has more pressing traditional security issues emanating from Afghanistan, emanating from India, which kind of takes over the entire bulk of our security discourse as such. Zahid, I would like to borrow your ideas, your opinion, as to what is more overwhelming. Are they a contributor, a mega contributor to instability in Pakistan? You have looked at the Taliban, you have looked at the issues emanating from the Western as well as the Eastern Front. So what are those factors of instability that are genuinely contributing, and are they really a genuine factor of instability or not?
I think, unfortunately, we have been in search of stability since the inception of this country. For 75 years, we have seen the country going through one crisis to other. And it is not the same country which was created in 1947, as you mentioned earlier, about a disintegration of Pakistan in 1971. So I think the major problem when we talk about instability, we often talk about external factors. But I think the major problem which has created or generated this instability is more internally. And I think and it also created some kind of insecurity as far as Pakistan's security challenges are concerned. So let me first say about what Pakistan's problem is. In this country, we have seen about 75 years, most of the time, we have lived under the direct military rules. For almost 3 decades, we have seen several military dictatorship in this country. And after that, even when there has been some kind of in between so-called civilian democratically elected government, were they really democratically elected? I don't think so. And the shadow of the military has always been there. So we have lurched between direct military rule to indirect military rule, and what we call now, the latest term is being used, hybrid rule. Hybrid rule, in fact, actually has been there we have seen some kind of army's role way back 90s. But what we are witnessing today is much more blatant and brazen involvement of the military in the politics. And so obviously, when we're talking about instability, so we cannot actually separate or see it in isolation. Isolation means actually whatever is happening. Unfortunately, whenever we had election, that always been controversial. Have you ever seen any election which was not controversial in this country? And whatever happened on 8th February, I will be more frank about it, and we have never seen it before. And what happened actually, when we talk about instability, this is cause of the instability. When people's verdict is stolen, how can you even think about maintaining some kind of stability in this country? And then it comes to you just mentioned about external threat. Yes, Pakistan is in a region where we also face lots of security challenges. But this is the country where we have 3 borders, huge, long borders with 3 countries, and we are not actually peaceful border any. First, we had long dispute with India, and we always said that the major security threat come from the eastern border. But now we are seeing actually the western border is much more dangerous or hostile. And same one could say that may not be a very hostile relationship with Iran, but certainly there's not a kind of uneasy peace on that border too. So this is the crux. So you cannot separate the two. Instability largely generated from the internal factors, and then actually it is your external factors also contributed. As earlier we were discussing in the earlier session, that Pakistan has been in frontline state for the last 40 years. We have seen two major wars across the border, and both involved superpowers. And it had directly bearing on our security. And it's also like when we talk about this kind of thing, it has a direct bearing on our domestic stability.
Malia Saiba, my question to you is, you talk about this poly-crisis and the crisis of governance and the unfulfilled promises that have prolonged over these decades. And you call it a cumulative consequence, the misgovernance and lost opportunities. What is the way out? Is there a way out? Can we do anything about this?
Let me answer your question in three ways, or rather in three parts. First, of course, is the nature of the crisis. So you use the word which I've used, it's a polycrisis. What is a polycrisis? A polycrisis is when several crises converge to create a bigger challenge that's larger than any single crisis. And the crises are economic, political, institutional, educational, population, you name it. And we confront it. And of course, security. I mean, even today, there has been an attack on security. Yeah, exactly.
In Quetta.
In Quetta, exactly. So the nature of the crisis is systemic. This is a can that's been kicked down the road every time a new government comes. But the can is really worn out, it's rusty now. So it's very difficult to see how these crises can be addressed in isolation to each other. So that's the nature of the environment that we face today. Plus, I think if we look at the notion of political instability, why have we had instability in our country? We've had instability because we've had poor governance, we've had rule without law, we've had, as you said yourself, broken promises, postponed reforms, and we've also had a volatile neighborhood, which is intersected with big power politics, especially in neighboring Afghanistan, to create security challenges of an enormous nature, in addition to the fact that we have a bully on the block, which is India. So all of these have presented really huge problems for Pakistan. We've also had elites. In fact, we've had elite capture in Pakistan. It's the military and civil, or the political elites that basically control the state. The Riyasat is controlled by them, which is fine. I think everywhere there are some elites controlling their country. But then our elites have been completely reform averse. They've been opposed to reform, they've been anti-reform. They may say whatever they want, but they don't do it. So this is the nature of what we confront today. And yet, this is an argument I make in my book, and I have to plug my book here. Those who haven't bought it had better buy it. It's called Pakistan Search for Stability. Zahid has contributed. Bilal Saab has also contributed. So, the argument that I make in my book, and I sort of say this in my op-ed pieces as well, Pakistan's politics is out of sync now with the socio-economic changes that are sweeping our country. That is what is making the system completely dysfunctional. And I think we need to identify, because when you say what's the way out, I'm coming to your question. What are these socio-economic changes? One, the emergence and expansion of a larger middle class. Two, the shift in the economic center of gravity from the countryside to the cities. Three, a more energetic media, although efforts are made to control that media, of course, and they go on even as I speak. But yet, the media strikes back. Then we have a more diverse civil society. So I think if you look at the confluence of these factors, they're adding up to dynamics of change where people want a merit in our political system. They don't want dynasties anymore. They're tired of the same faces we have seen for 40 years. Because for 40 years, if you haven't delivered, if they had delivered in 40 years, Pakistan should have been on the way to becoming a very prosperous country without the inequities of different kinds that we have. We would not have been economically dependent on others. Today, our foreign policy is reduced to the begging bowl. All we do is go to 3 countries to ask for money. That's our foreign policy. That's not a foreign policy, but that's what we call a foreign policy. So I think this is a moment, I think it's a moment, it's an inflection point for Pakistan. We're at a crossroads. And the choices we have to make are very stark. Either we remain in the rut of the cycle of bad governance, poor economic policies, continued borrowing, indebtedness, inflation, and the people not being involved in the decisions that affect their lives and their destiny, or we break from this and chart a different path for ourselves, which is in sync with Pakistan in the 21st century, which is in sync with the aspirations of the middle class, which are also in sync with what the people of Pakistan want. And what do they want? I mean, they want the most basic of things. They want a better life for themselves. They want schools to send their children to. I mean, look at the human security crisis in our country, or human development crisis in our country. And I'll just close on that note so that Bilal Saab also has a chance. We have 26 million children out of school. What a disgrace. It's a moral disgrace. It's a political disgrace and it's a moral disgrace. You cannot have a country making progress when 26 million children are deprived of a future. So what are the children, what is the youth? We take great pride in our youth bulge. But what is this youth bulge? This youth bulge consists of children who haven't been to school. And therefore, they won't be able to find jobs. They have a hopeless future in front of them.
True.
On top of that, we have a situation where inequities are now so sharp that you have 2 Pakistans. One is the Pakistan of the super elite, and the other is the Pakistan of everyone else. How long can you go on like this? And I think the key, and I'm glad the audience responded to this, unless we educate ourselves, we have no future. No, and these recent governments do not realize this. I mean, they go around to Saudi Arabia, UAE, God knows where they go, to every person who they see wearing an Arab dress, and they say, give us some money. Why don't you educate yourself first?
True.
Because there is no economic progress that can be predicated on an illiterate base. Pakistan today is 40% illiterate. 40% of our people are illiterate. It's unacceptable.
So true.
We have 40% poverty in our country. People below the poverty line. Unacceptable. So what kind of a ruling elite is this? This ruling elite is just there for itself.
Absolutely.
It's there to aggrandize its power. It passes constitutional amendments only to empower itself. This has nothing to do with the people of Pakistan. It has nothing to do with public welfare.
Right.
So the way out is very clear. The way out is we have to break from the past. We cannot live in the past.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sahiba. I will have another cycle of discussion with you all, and we are going to take up more issues on that. Ahmed Bilal Saab, you have invested so strongly in parliamentary education and development, legislative development, as well as you pioneered the youth parliament concept as well. Your organization was one of the first to do that. My question, very straightforward, to you is, what is lacking in that parliamentary education and the elite in this structure that they become a little less elite and more educated, the point Dr. Maliha has said. And I think education जिसका ये जिक्र कर रही हैं वो तो एक तो स्कूल एजुकेशन है और एक वो एजुकेशन है जो एजुकेटेड होने के बावजूद हम में नहीं है, knowledge and awareness of how to go about doing things. So with this strong experience in history and legislative development, what is lacking? Why haven't we really made that mark in our parliamentary processes, as well as the youth that is coming up? what promise do you find in them? How can they deliver, and how have they actually, if there is a generation of that youth, have they performed in the parliamentary system or the legislative system? Thank you.
बहुत शुक्रिया. देखिए, हमारे यहाँ जो पार्लिमानी डेमोक्रेसी या कोई भी डेमोक्रेसी, उसके नाकाम होने या उसके कमज़ोर होने या उसके अंदर कुछ लैकिंग होने की एक ही बड़ी वजह है. छोटी छोटी कोई और भी वजूहात है, लेकिन एक बड़ी वजह है, और वो ये थी कि हमारे एक मिलिट्री रूलर ने एक बार कहा था कि अगर आपको डेमोक्रेसी की ज़रूरत है इसके लेबल की, तो लीजिए ये भी मैं लगा देता हूँ. ये उन्होंने कहा था 2002 के इंतखाबात कराते हुए. तो हमारे मुल्क में जो जमहूरियत है वो असल में लेबल है. दो बातें अर्ज़ करना चाहता हूँ. एक तो ये है कि हमने इस्लामिक रिपब्लिक ऑफ पाकिस्तान बनाने का ऐलान किया था, हम उससे भी बहुत सिंसियर नहीं हैं, और ये जो डेमोक्रेसी है इससे भी हम सिंसियर नहीं हैं. हमने लेबल लगाए हुए हैं और सिंसियर नहीं हैं. और ये आप कहती है ना कि क्या लैकिंग है, वो यही लैकिंग है. 1970 का और लोगों ने पता नहीं उससे क्या नतीजा निकाला हो, लेकिन उन लोगों ने जिनके हाथ ताकत के लिवर्स पे हैं, उन्होंने ये नतीजा निकाला कि फेयर इलेक्शन कराना बहुत बुरी बात है, उससे मुल्क टूट जाता है. तो उसके बाद से फिर फैसला हुआ कि मुल्क में फेयर इलेक्शन नहीं होना चाहिए. नताइज पहले से मुरतब होने चाहिए और उसके बाद इलेक्शन होने चाहिए. जिस तरह कहा जाता है ना, नादिर शाह ने अपने दरबार में अपने वज़रा को बुला के कहा कि माबदौलत ने फ़ैसला किया है कि हिंदुस्तान पे हमला कर दिया जाए, इसकी वजूहात तलाश की जाए. तो बिल्कुल हमारे यहाँ इलेक्शन के नताइज पहले से मुरतब होते हैं, और तय होता है कि ये जीतेगा और ये नहीं जीतेगा. जीते होने के बारे में ज़्यादा अगर फोकस ना हो तो ये तो तय होता है कि इसको नहीं जीतना चाहिए.
तो हमारी फोरसाइट है ना
जी, बिल्कुल
फोरसाइट है.
तो हम ये मामला इतना अहम है कि इसको हम इंतखाबात पे नहीं छोड़ते कि किसको हमारा मुंतखब नुमाइंदा होना चाहिए. जिस तरह वो कहते हैं ना जी कि पॉलिटिक्स टू सीरियस अ बिजनेस टू बी लेफ्ट टू पॉलिटिशियंस, या कहते हैं वॉर इज़ टू सीरियस अ बिजनेस टू बी लेफ्ट टू जनरल्स. तो इस तरह हमने सोचा हुआ है कि ये पॉलिटिक्स और इलेक्शन रिजल्ट्स आर टू सीरियस अ बिजनेस टू बी लेफ्ट टू इलेक्शंस. इसका हमें खुद से इंतज़ाम करना पड़ेगा. तो अगर आप ये इलेक्शन बाद इलेक्शन, और यही मैंने अपने जो चैप्टर मैंने कंट्रीब्यूट किया मोहतरमा मलिया लोधी साहबा के कहने पे, उसके अंदर मैंने यही बात कही कि ये इलेक्शंस का जो प्रोसेस है इसको हमने जिस तरह से मैनिपुलेट किया और उसकी कोई क्रेडिबिलिटी नहीं रहने दी, हमारी इंस्टेबिलिटी का एक बड़ी वजह ये है. और उसके प्रोडक्ट में फिर जो पार्लियामेंट बनती है, वो पार्लियामेंट फिर उस लेवल पे नहीं होती कि वो अपने आप को असर्ट कर सके मुल्क की इंस्टेबिलिटी के जो अनासर हैं उनके ऊपर कोई काबू पाने के लिए. वो बहुत ही कमज़ोर, क्योंकि उसको तख्लीक करने वाले कुछ और लोग होते हैं, तो इसलिए वो अपने आप को पूरी तरह से असर्ट नहीं कर पाती, कुछ चीज़ों को मुतासर भी नहीं कर सकती. तो इसलिए पार्लियामेंट्री सिस्टम हमारा इस बुनियादी वजह से, देखिए ना, आप एक छोटी सी ग्रॉसरी शॉप भी हो, यानी ये तो हो सकता है कि अगर आप एक मुल्क का निज़ाम तय कर दें कि इस एक शख्स ने या इस एक पार्टी या इस एक ग्रुप ने चलाना है, तो वो तो चल सकता है, खा वो इलेक्टेड हो या अनइलेक्टेड हो. दुनिया में कई मुल्क ऐसे हैं जहाँ पे अनइलेक्टेड हैं लेकिन निज़ाम बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है. लेकिन ये नहीं हो सकता कि आप लेबल किसी और चीज़ का लगाएं और अंदर कोई और चीज़ हो. ये दोगलापन जो है, ये डुप्लिसिटी, ये नहीं चल सकती. तो आप ये बार बार सामने किसी और को बिठाते हैं और फैसले को और करता है, ये नहीं हो सकता. तो ये ख़राबी की जड़ ये है. इसको कितनी भी एहतियात से कहा जाए तो ख़तरे का बायस है. اس لیے مزید اس کو ریپیٹ نہیں کرنا چاہتا، لیکن بنیادی وجہ یہ ہے، اس کو
چلیے
آپ جب تک ایڈریس نہیں کریں
ہم
گے
سوال
یہ
بدلتے
خرابی
ہیں.
چلتی رہے گی.
ہم ذرا پرسکرپٹیو ہو جاتے ہیں کہ لیٹس سی ہاؤ دیز تھنگس کین ورک. Sahid, one of the issues that you people discussed in this particular book that you have all contributed to, one aspect was that of population control. But whenever we talk of population, then there's a very empowered segment of the society, the religious pundits, who totally disregard that there is anything such as known as population control. How do you consider this coming up of various mini power centers, which are very influential, given that at one point is that vacuum which has been created by an overarching institution, and then you have these mini power centers that are trying to assert themselves and creating a mess as a result. Can we actually harness issues such as an unbridled population, 40% uneducated lot, and see if that can work and balance the religious factor as well, because you have done a lot of work on religious groups and these extremism?
Your last session was on national security versus human security, and which says a lot actually. There's always been actually a comparison that national security is largely seen in from the paradigm of the forces which can protect our borders. But the major problem in Pakistan, and I think probably the major threat to the internal stability and security, is basically largely, as earlier been mentioned, lowest human development index we have in the world. I think probably in some of the aspects in South Asia, we are just close to Afghanistan. And that's basically not only as far as the education is concerned, health facility is concerned, but the most serious problem which people are reluctant to talk about is, as you mentioned, the population growth. A country which is growing at the rate of 2.8% or maybe 3% according to some estimate, how can you can sustain this kind of development? When you talk about so many children out of school, no country in the world with this kind of population growth can handle this situation, number one. Number two, when we talk about, you have seen the debate before the election, during the election, or even actually when the government come to power. Have they ever discussed these major issues concerning Pakistan? You will never find any debate, concrete debate on population, on health, on education in the parliament. No one. What you are hearing is that what kind of control we should have on the press, what kind of control we should have on the judiciary, and that is basically the whole matter. Which even the contribution of the parliament is negligible. Most of the laws which have been passed, I think probably the parliamentary did not know anything about that. Even the leadership did not know about it. What was being moved? So that is basically the dilemma, or basically the predicament of Pakistani society. Even we have, if we can see actually, take all the political parties. They may have, because it is now a kind of, binding on political parties to issue a kind of election manifesto. But election manifesto, I think, never read by even the leadership, given to some kind of outsources. They have to produce it because it is the requirement by the election commission to have a manifesto. But have you ever seen anyone talking about those major issues? No one. And I think probably this is the real problem with Pakistan. And I think probably what we are witnessing, leave aside actually national security in that term, a population explosion could lead to an implosion of the society. And I think probably this danger threat, nobody even talk about it. And Pakistan's population, West Pakistan, when we were at one country, Pakistan's total population was about 700 million, and that includes East Pakistan at that point. And East Pakistan's population was more than West Pakistan, but we are far ahead now on this issue. So I think probably when we talk about stability, unless until we address those basic problems, we cannot have stability in this country.
Thank you, Zahid Saab. I'm sorry, we are very short on time. I would appreciate Maliha Saiba and Ahmed Saab के आपसे छोटे सवाल और छोटे जवाब मैं लूँ ताकि हम एक दो सवाल ऑडियंस से भी ले सकें. Maliha Saiba, from you I would like to ask, mashallah, you are an empowered woman. You are an example of what many young ladies in this audience would like to be, right? The person who says what she has to say with full conviction. She's educated, she's been everywhere, she has been Pakistan's representative to the world capitals. Where do you find the women empowerment and women participation as contributing to the stability of the country?
You know, sometimes I go to conferences and they say, we'd like you to answer that question as a woman. And my answer always is, I've never been anything else in my life, so I have to answer it as a woman. So it's a bit like that, that you asked me a question which has to do with women. I think women have made strides in our country. But I think there's a gender deficit in terms of, education, school, access to health, access to employment. Our participation in the labor force is still lower than many Middle Eastern countries, and we think that we're more advanced than them. So I think, there's much to be done. But I do think that there are many role models that we have that we didn't have, let's say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I also find, women participating in or taking part in professions or entering professions which were closed to them before. So I think things have changed. But I'd really like to say something on foreign policy right now, because I think women is...
that would have been my other question. If you can just hold your thought, and I'll come back to you.
Let me just say a few words.
Okay, just
because I think, the audience would like to also hear from me, not just as a woman, because what the hey given है.
If you just allow me, मैं अहमद महबूब साहब से यही सवाल कर लूँ, and then I'll revert
about women.
to you.
But I would like to say something on foreign policy.
आपके foreign policy के सवाल standalone
I really think today people want to hear about foreign policy.
Absolutely. I would revert back to you. वो standalone question है. महबूब साहब, आपसे भी मैं वही सवाल करना चाहूँगी जो मैडम से मैंने किया है. और फिर मैं उनके फॉरेन पॉलिसी पे व्यू लेना चाहूँगी, क्योंकि ट्रम्प साहब के इलेक्शन को हम बहुत इंटरनलाइज कर रहे हैं और मैडम से मैं ख़ास तौर पे उस पर बात करना चाहूँगी. आप बताएं, आपका जो ख़वातीन लेजिस्लेटिव्स के साथ काम रहा है, डू यू थिंक दे कैन बी अ बीकन ऑफ स्टेबिलिटी और सम पॉजिटिव चेंज इन द सिस्टम ग्रास रूट लेवल एंड अबव?
देखिए, हकीकत ये है कि अगर पाकिस्तान में दो चार चीज़ों की लिस्ट बनाई जाए जो हमारे पॉजिटिव इंडिकेटर्स हैं, तो उनमें हमारी ख़वातीन जिस तरह से, पता नहीं कैसे, लेकिन जिस तरह से वो उभर रही हैं, ज़्यादा तादाद में एजुकेशन पे जा रही हैं, यूनिवर्सिटी भी उनकी तादाद 50% से ज़्यादा हो गई है ऑन द एवरेज. और मैं चूँकि एक छोटा सा एम्प्लॉयर भी हूँ, 25-30 लोग काम करते हैं, तो मैं अपने पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस से बता सकता हूँ कि ख़वातीन कम अज़ कम एवरेज निकालते हुए मर्दों से 50% ज़्यादा सीरियस है और 50% ज़्यादा प्रोडक्टिव है. ये ख़वातीन के अक्रॉस द बोर्ड दोस्तों से बात होती है तो
मैं यही सुनना चाह रही थी.
हाँ, और ये हमारा पॉजिटिव सा. और ये कैसे हुआ है, ये पता नहीं कैसे हो गया है. वो जैसे कहते हैं ना, हमने बहुत दबाने की कोशिश की, हमने बहुत रास्ते रोके कि ये होने ना पाए, लेकिन ये हो गया है. ये मौजज़ा है. जिस तरह वो कहते हैं ना, फ़िरौन के घर मूसा पला था. मे बी इट्स एग्जैजरेटेड एग्जाम्पल, बट हकीकत यह है कि हमने जितना दबाने और रोकने की कोशिश इस सोसाइटी ने औरत को की है, इसके बावजूद वो उभर के सामने आ रही है. तो ये बहुत साइन ऑफ होप है. इसको हम इसे कम अज़ कम इब्तदा तो नहीं कर सके, लेकिन अब इसको रोके ना, इसको मज़ीद प्रमोट करें। लेकिन ये होगा मेरे ख़्याल में, औरतों ने ख़ुद अपने बलबूते पे किया है, और जो आइंदा भी होगा वो भी अपने बलबूते पे करेंगी। ना स्टेट ने कुछ किया है, ना स्टेट आइंदा कुछ कर पाएगी, मेरा ख्याल है।
Thank you so much. Malia Saiba, the exclusive question from you, and then we have very little time for Q&A,
I'll just be
but
very
वो भी हम
brief.
करेंगे. Foreign policy and the US elections.
I just want to, well, I don't know why our country and our media was so obsessed with the, American election. I do not understand. I mean, I was in many interviews and I was just shocked to find the questions that I was asked as if it was about us. This election had nothing to do with us. And हमारी सेहत पे इसका कोई असर नहीं पड़ेगा. Absolutely zero. In fact, I used to be asked this question, what will it mean for Pakistan? And I used to say, sifar, nothing, zilch, zero. And they didn't know कि अगला सवाल क्या पूछा जाए. But I mean, I just wanted to say a few words about the state of foreign policy because I feel very strongly about it. I think today Pakistan's foreign policy, like its politics, like its economic management, is in shambles. It's in shambles. We have two major powers in the world, China and the United States. With China, our relationship is in trouble. With the United States, it's at a very low level. We are maybe a third tier, if I can call it a priority. I think we're a zero priority right now for the United States because our governments have failed to adopt an imaginative way to engage Washington. In the neighborhood, never in our history have we had troubled relations with all our neighbors, all of them at the same time. Pakistan's entire security and foreign policy was predicated, and that's something that I worked on as a practitioner, was to avert a two-front situation. How many fronts do we have today? In addition to the internal front. Internally, we are confronted with an insurgency, a full-blown insurgency, and on every front. And I saw on WhatsApp, people share these funny sort of messages also. So somebody shared something with me, and I thought it was hilarious, but it said something, that the only neighbor Pakistan has a good relationship with is the Arabian Sea. So, we are, I think, like the national situation today, on the foreign policy front also, I think this is a moment of reflection. And it's a moment where really these policy makers, whoever they are, whoever's controlling Bilal Saab knows more about it. But first of all, the military should step back. The military should step back. It should step back from Pakistan's politics. It should step back from trying to control everything about foreign policy. Because, not everybody knows everything. And I think their intrusion into politics, deep intrusion that Zahid spoke about, is undermining their own institution. So this is not in their interest. It is not in the interest of Pakistan. And on foreign policy also, I'll give you one example and then I'll end here. On Afghan policy, we've gone from becoming the ambassadors of the Taliban to becoming mortal enemies of the Taliban. What kind of foreign policy is this? What is this? You can't go from one extreme to the other. You've got to find a middle path of engaging and trying to see what we can do with a difficult neighbor. As a woman, I'm certainly no fan of the Taliban, but I think there's a need to engage with them. But here, the military has exclusive control. Exclusive control. Now, they have to have civilian input. There are some things the military does well. There's some things that they cannot do well. There's some things civilians do well, and there's some things that we can't do well. They must accept that. And I think one of the fundamental factors behind political instability or instability of the country is this sort of resolved civil-military problem. It's unresolved. Because ask the people of Pakistan what they want. We can't ask Shahbaz Sharif what he wants. We can't ask Maryam Nawaz. We know what they want. Ask the people of Pakistan what they want. They want a genuine elected government that makes policy and that is responsive to the needs and the demands of the people. So, with great respect, I say the military should step back.
Thank you so much. The only neighbor that we have good relations with, the Arabian Sea, is because we have sea blindness. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had good relations with them either. Technically, we're out of time and out of space, but let's quickly have few rounds of questions. How much time, Uzma Saiba, are you giving us? 15 minutes? Great. Okay, Ji. So I'm going to cluster the questions. First question comes from the gentleman at the very front row, and then here. And then we will take 2-3 questions together. My apologies to the respondents, very quick two-liners.
But we have to take a question from a girl also, a young
Inshallah,
girl, a young lady
inshallah.
also, not
Okay.
just men.
So the young lady has already shown her presence. जी, बेटा यहाँ इनको दीजिएगा माइक. और प्लीज क्वेश्चंस प्रिसाइज रखिए, बहुत लंबे सवाल ना करें.
Of course, while listening to the panel, I was wondering, we are very quick at criticizing military. But isn't it a fact that all those convoluted institutions that we inherited from our past, like civil bureaucracy, military, judiciary, and the electoral systems, National Assembly and Provincial Assembly system, aren't these all institutions transformed into extractive institutions that are, feeding into the
Right.
power economic reserve of the few elite and denying
Question
regional
please.
masses?
Question please.
I'm asking this question, if you allow me. Isn't it the general state of rot that all our institutions, particularly those
Thank you
that we
so
inherited,
much. The young gentleman, जी. और उसके बाद जो बच्ची पीछे बैठी हुई है, आपका सवाल होगा, and the lady in the second row.
मेरा सवाल मैडम मलिहा से है कि हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी में एक कंटिन्यूएशन अभी तक क्यों नहीं आई है. कोई भी इरिटेटिंग फैक्टर हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी को, चाहे वो पॉलिटिकल पार्टी हो, वो कोई पॉलिटिकल या एक पॉपुलिस्ट लीडर हो, वो हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी को क्यों डैमेज करता है. हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी में अभी तक कंटिन्यूएशन क्यों नहीं आई है और ये कैसे आ सकती है.
Thank you so much. जी, the lady at the back, the young lady who had G in the white.
My question is from Ma'am Maliha. I would like to ask that why, as youth of this country, not as a woman but as the youth of the country, I feel obsolete at this point in any way that I can help in the progress, in the prospering of the country because of the establishment. So what do you think that we as the youth of the country can do?
I would rather address both these questions to either of the two gentlemen. And G, your question, lady in the second row.
Panel ka bahut shukriya. If Pakistan is at the crossroads, what is the paradigm shift or the circuit breaker that's going to change our direction?
Thank you very much. Zahir Sahab, aap se hum shuru kare, and then Dr. Maliha has more questions than her share, and then Bilal Sahab. Ji. Whatever you want to respond to.
There's no continuity on foreign policy. The first thing actually, the foreign policy starts from home. So in fact, actually, if your country is not stable, if you have actually economically dependent or other, how can you have a foreign policy? Just a little on this, how does the mentality work? Then Trump's election, I think if you see, there was some question in the last session that media has been talking about what will happen after Trump's return. And so they accused media for that. But basically I said, what about the leadership? If you see the Pakistani leaders talking on the television, for example, your defense minister, I've heard him several times. The only thing he was talking, whether there will be a phone call for release of Imran Khan or not. And in fact, actually, the entire thing was reduced to this, how will Trump react to Imran Khan's detention? I think that's one of the things, actually. I'm not saying coming from layman. I'm talking about the country's defense minister. And he has been saying all along, and when I see the font, and he has, it's like he was threatening, one of the statements I was listening to it, that we warn America that if they do have the correct policy, then we will oppose it. I mean, like this kind of situation we have.
करते हैं फिर मैडम आखिर में जी.
अच्छा, मैं आखिर में एक खातून ने सवाल किया था जिसको मैंने इस तरह समझा कि ये चेंज कैसे हो सकता है. ये जो हम बयान कर रहे हैं उसको अगर प्रिसाइजली कहें तो सिविल मिलिट्री रिलेशंस की इक्वेशन कैसे चेंज हो सकती है. तो मेरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने पेलडैट ने ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ टाइम इस पर कुछ रिसर्च की और हम वी वेंट अराउंड द वर्ल्ड उन मुल्कों में जहाँ ये मसला था और फिर बाद में कब हल हो गया, इंडोनेशिया, तो 3 मॉडल है, क्विकली बयान कर दूं। तुर्की का मॉडल जिसमें एक एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर था कि उसने EU का मेंबर बनना था, उसकी शर्त थी कि फ़ौज को पीछे हटना चाहिए ताकि सिविल बालादस्ती हो, और ये एक शर्त थी EU में प्रोसेस शुरू होने की। वो प्रोसेस शुरू हुआ, मिलिट्री पीछे हटी क्योंकि वो बहुत पॉपुलर डिमांड थी। 85% ऑफ टर्क्स वांटेड टू बी इन EU। थिंग्स हैव चेंज सिंस देन ऑलमोस्ट डायमेट्रिकली, लेकिन उस वक्त ये था, तो वो पीछे हटी और जो सिविलियन गवर्नमेंट आई उसने फिर अच्छा काम किया, इकॉनमी को एड्रेस किया। तो एक तो वो कि बाहर से कोई ऐसी चीज़ हो जाए। दूसरी चीज़ है इंडोनेशिया की। इंडोनेशिया में जब सुहार्तो के ख़िलाफ़ अपराइजिंग हुई और वो जाने लगे तो उन्होंने अपने चीफ ऑफ डिफेंस फोर्सेस को जनरल वेरांतो को बुलाया और कहा कि आप टेक ओवर कर लो। उन्होंने कहा कि हमारी फ़ौज में कंसेंसस ये है कि ये हमारे लिए डिज़ास्टर्स होगा, हम टेक ओवर नहीं करते। हम हबीबी साहब जो वाइस प्रेसिडेंट थे उनको टेक ओवर कराते हैं और हम पीछे रहेंगे, विल हेल्प हिम। सो दिस इज़ हाउ पावर वाज ट्रांसफर्ड। और तीसरा एक एग्जाम्पल है जो खुदा करे जिसको हम फॉलो न करें, वो साउथ कोरिया की है। वहाँ पे देयर वाज ए ब्लडी स्ट्रीट रेवोल्यूशन, लोगों का खून बहा, फसादात हुए और उसके नतीजे में हुकूमत बदली। तो ये चेंज के 3 तरीके हैं मेरे ख्याल में। तो जो इंडोनेशिया का तरीका है वो बहुत अच्छा तरीका है, और एग्जैक्टली बाकी चीज़ें डिसरप्टिव हैं, उससे बहुत नुकसान होगा इंस्टीट्यूशंस का भी, मुल्क का भी। लेकिन अगर वो खुद समझ के कुछ बैक ऑफ करें, जिसका मुतालबा मलिया लोधी साहबा ने किया है, मैं एम्फसाइज करना चाहता था कि डॉक्टर साहबा ने किया, तो उसका वही एक तरीका है। नहीं, उस चीज़ में वज़न पैदा होगा ना अगर मैं कहूँगा कि डॉक्टर साहबा ने भी कहा है। थैंक यू।
बहुत शुक्रिया जी। So, who belts the cat has already been kind of answered. Madam, your response to the questions.
There were 3 questions. The one question I think from here was that all institutions are in some state of disrepair, or they have lost public confidence. I think that's what you were saying, right? I think if that is the diagnosis, and I think most people would agree, there is declining public faith in government institutions, all of them, and declining public faith in government, any government, because of the inability of governments to deliver what the people want. It's pretty obvious. So, you're absolutely right that what we need to do is to address all of it. And that's why I said that the crisis we face today is systemic. It cannot be done or fixed by tinkering, by Band-Aid. Can't do it anymore. It won't work. And I think some efforts have been made to fix something or the other, but too little, too late. So what we need is a reformist government, a genuinely reformist government that believes that it's in power to serve the people of Pakistan, not to serve themselves or to make money. I think that's key, because corruption remains a major challenge for us, and it's corroding these institutions. You know that, and I know. I'm not telling you anything that's new. On youth, I would say you're absolutely right. I think the leaders of Pakistan have failed the youth of Pakistan. There's no question about it. So there is a need again for our rulers, whoever they are, whoever goes and says that I want to get myself elected, to see how best they can engage youth in the decisions that will affect the future, or their future. And they are the future of the country. It's not a cliche, it's true. So you're absolutely right. You should be motivated to doing things that you're not, because you need a leadership which is both inspired and inspiring. Today we have a leadership which is both uninspired and uninspiring. So, you have to be inspired by something. You have to believe in something. And then you have to inspire others to follow you. That's kind of the basic, that's leadership 101. The third question was about continuity. I think Zayed has answered that very well, but I will just repeat that, yes, all foreign policy begins at home. And again, I would say that many of our ruling elites or governments actually have thought that visits are all about foreign policy. That all they have to do is visit countries or get visitors to our countries, and that those visits are foreign policy. Visits are visits, they're not policy. I mean, one of the things that I've been advocating, and obviously nobody's listened, is that Pakistan needs to do a broad-ranging review of its foreign policy because the world has fundamentally changed. Our region has changed. There are new dynamics in the world today. Foreign policy it needs a new toolkit. The last review that was carried out of foreign policy, if I remember correctly, was during Musharraf's era. After that, no review. So what's the point of elected governments if they don't even come in to review? And you don't review your goals. Goals remain the same. But you review how best you can implement those goals and promote them effectively.
Right.
On change, that's a very difficult question. Very difficult question. By now, change should have come to our country because we know the sentiment on the street. We know the public sentiment. It is not in favor of the dynasties. It is not in favor of those who run our country today. They are there on a fake mandate. Nobody elected these people. They have been foisted on Pakistan. There's no doubt about it. So, in a way, it's like you put a lid on something that will, the lava is there. And the danger is what Bilal Saab was, in a way, saying, but not in relation to Pakistan. Because if you do not bring about peaceful change, if you do not open the doors to peaceful change, if you don't allow the young to express themselves, to be part of the political process, then what will happen? You will see a society that will be riven by division, violence, and so much despondency. And I think the biggest enemy of anything, change, progress, is hopelessness.
Right.
When you lose hope, you lose everything. Hope is the biggest thing that empowers you. So I end on that.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
आशीष जी, मैं चाहूँगी सामने से मैं बिल्कुल कोई सवाल नहीं ले रही. माय अपॉलॉजीज. स्पीकर्स यही हैं, आप लोग बाद में उनको इंगेज कर लीजिएगा. पीछे से एक वहाँ से सवाल, और अगर किसी का यहाँ से सवाल है तो पूछिए. Okay, so we have one question and one question from that young lady at the back. जी, please brief. हम आखिरी 5 मिनट में.
My question is from Maliha Lodji Sahiba, that don't you think the government should include the civil society and the civil institution in foreign policy making, especially?
Okay, thank you. Civil society's inclusion in foreign policy making. जी फरमाइए, आपका सवाल.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is, what do you think where societal and social norms of Pakistan stand regarding the idea of stability in Pakistan?
Okay, thank you so much. Great. Zahid Saab.
I think we have talked about ideology of Pakistan. Or I think the one thing which we have not discussed is when we are talking about search of stability, is that Pakistan has grown into one of the most intolerant country in the world religiously. And religious extremism in Pakistan poses one of the biggest threats to the security of this country. Can you believe this country, how can we move forward when we see the people are lynched on the road just on the false accusation? And I think probably this is the biggest threat Pakistan is having. When we talk about search for identity or search for stability, there's little talk about it. A country has become hostage to extremism. We talk about, and I think, we talk about India, whatever is happening in India. Yes, is whatever is happening there, nobody can condone. This is the worst thing happening there to Muslim country. But look, actually, more Muslims are killed in this country than anywhere in the world. And the biggest threat, like for example, nobody is safe in this country. Somebody will get up and say, accuse me of blasphemy and lynch me. And you don't have to go to even court. One example of, I'll just mention one example of a young professor of Bahauddin University, very bright student, and he just held a seminar, and some people accuse him of blasphemy, and he's languishing in jail for about 8 years without even being tried. His lawyer was killed, and exactly what happened to the Bardan University, Mishal Khan. I think this is the country we have become, where we have no tolerance for anyone, we have no actually freedom for expression, and anybody will stop and say, look, actually you have accused us of blasphemy.
Right. Thank you. Dr. Maliha Sahiba, very quick take, and then. G1 was inclusion of civil society and foreign policy. आप उसको देख
बात
लीजिए.
ये कि फॉरेन पॉलिसी में गवर्नमेंट खुद इन्वॉल्व नहीं है तो सिविल सोसाइटी को क्या इन्वॉल्व करेगी?
Thank you. Ahmed Bilal Mehboob sir, identity and civil society.
नहीं, हम तो फुली इन्वॉल्व हैं. जिस तरह कहते हैं ना कि शादी तय है 50%, क्योंकि हम तैयार हैं, तो हम तो मशवरे दे रहे हैं, हम तो कह रहे हैं, तो हम तो फुली इन्वॉल्व हैं, लेकिन कोई मशवरा नहीं सुन रहा और अमल भी नहीं कर रहा, तो क्या किया जाए?
तो लड़की राजी है.
जी
बिल्कुल, absolutely. So basically, how do I sum up? One question was the identity and civil society. اور پھر جو ایک سوال تھا وہ رول آف سول سوسائٹی. دو ہی سوال تھے ہمارے.
میں ایک سینٹینس کہہ دوں کہ انوالو کرنا نہیں ہوتا, انوالو ہونا ہوتا ہے. کوئی انوالو کرے گا نہیں, خود انوالو.
سیریس نوٹ احمد صاحب, انوالو کیسے ہوا جائے؟ اگر آپ اس کا تھوڑا سا
سیشن اسی پہ ہے,
اس پہ نہیں ہے. سو ایک سینٹینس میں بلکہ آدھے سینٹینس
میں آپ کو ایک مثال دیتا ہوں. ینگ لوگ بہت شور مچاتے ہیں کہ ہمیں انوالو نہیں کوئی کرتا. ووٹ ڈالتے وقت ہماری تو ویسے ہی اوور آل ووٹر ٹرن آؤٹ کم ہے, 45% ہے ایوریج پچھلے 8 الیکشنوں کا, لیکن ینگ لوگوں کا جو ووٹر ٹرن آؤٹ وہ 30% ہے. تو اتنا بڑا گیپ ہے. تو یو اسٹارٹ بائی گیٹنگ انوالوڈ ان دی پولیٹیکل پروسیس بائی ایٹ لیسٹ گوئنگ آؤٹ ٹو ووٹ. وہ بھی نہیں کرتے.
I think that's a very, very pertinent point.
I will say one thing. I think people must have some confidence that their vote will be honestly counted. So it's very easy to say, please get involved, please get involved. If people think, or the young people think, that fraud is going to be played with them, or they're going to be disenfranchised, then they won't. So I think we are stuck in a vicious circle. It's not so simple to break this vicious circle.
Right.
یہ الیکشن رگ اس لیے ہو جاتے ہیں کہ ہمارا ووٹر ٹرن آؤٹ لو ہے. 80% لوگ اگر ٹرن آؤٹ ہو جائیں تو الیکشن رگ کرنے والے رگ ہی نہیں کر پائے.
لیکن میرا خیال یہ ہے کہ اس کو تو اس دفعہ ڈیفیٹ کر دیا اس نے بھی. مطلب یہ بات صحیح ہے کہ لوگ ٹرن آؤٹ, لیکن اس دفعہ جو کہ الیکشن, آئی ایم ناٹ سیئنگ کہ جو ہے everybody knows actually what happened. I think for the first time I saw people coming out to vote for a party. I'm not saying they were right or wrong, but they did vote a party which did not have a symbol, which did not have any, but not allowed to even campaign. People have spoken. یہ بات نہیں ہے کہ لوگوں کو نہیں بولا ہے. اس وقت آپ مجھے بتائیے کہ اس سے پہلے لوگوں نے اپنے خیالات کا اظہار کیا ہے یا نہیں کیا ہے, بٹ کیا ڈز اٹ میٹر دین؟ اصل چیز یہ ہوتی ہے کہ یہ ہم لوگوں کو بلیم اس لیے نہیں کر سکتے ہیں کہ لوگوں نے کہا ہے, لوگوں نے مطلب اگر 50% بھی, اگر امریکہ میں بہت زیادہ ٹرن آؤٹ نہیں ہے, کتنا 60% ہوگا, میکسیمم 65% ہوگا, 48%. لیکن بھائی میں بات کر رہا ہوں
the time is up. Okay ji, I would like to thank my 3 speakers. I think اگر ہم ان میں سے ہر ایک کے ساتھ کوئی ایک conversation کرتے تو it would have easily taken us 1 hour. The depth of knowledge, the depth of information, and the wealth of information all of you bring to this particular panel is overwhelming and extremely, extremely stellar. I'm extremely grateful to all 3 of you for sparing your time and joining this panel and enriching the audience with your experience and your conversation. Thank you so much. And with that, I thank the audience for participating here. All the best. God bless.
And I thank you for conducting it so well. Thank you very much.